Hey kids, Barry Mankin here with Four Corners Environmental and the Holistic Home Health Podcast. We're on vacation here on a Virgin cruise ship, and I've got some talking points here that I wanted to give you related to the air quality here. I was able to meet with the head engineer of HVAC, which was really interesting, and he gave me a small tour and talked about all the different mechanical issues that they have here and how they do air conditioning, how they do air quality, and help with the overall health of the ship as it relates to the experience for the passengers here. So I thought it'd be an interesting talking point for our listeners. And if you can see, we're coming home just outside of uh, Vancouver Island. We're going to hit Seattle, and then we're going to be back home in Nashville, and looking forward to get back in the saddle. But in the meantime, I thought this would be an interesting clip for you. So here's some talking points. As it relates to how they do their mechanical with the HVAC, this whole system is a chiller system. So whenever they're delivering conditioning, they're using liquid the whole way through. So both from a heat perspective and from a cooling perspective, they're using that chiller system and then a heat recovery system. And so the hot water goes through the entire, in different sections, but it goes through the entire system as it's zoned. And you have basically a centralized system, and then you have zoned systems as it relates to individual cabins, individual restaurants. Um, Different isolated areas have their own backup systems. So you have one centralized that deals with the main circulation and also deals with the main um, uh, fresh air makeup. And then you have individual backup systems for each cabin. So here's how this works. Number one, as it relates to the main system that they have, it is basically equilibrium. They're getting 50% fresh air makeup, 50% recirculation, and 50% conditioning. And they're mixing those based off the pressure. And so whenever they're looking at that pressure, they're talking about how that relates to balance between each floor across horizontally and between the floors vertically. So again, very interesting. They're going to monitor all of this with sensors throughout every floor and every zone of every floor. So whenever you're zoned in a specific area, they're going to monitor the temperature, the pressure, the uh, the moisture levels, the PM 2.5, all of that. And we always talk about these food and water concepts. Well, they have to manage that. It's a little bit more controlled here, but it's also more volatile as far as what comes in because these doors are open and closed all the time. The more warmer your climate is, whenever people are on their vacation, the doors stay open a lot more often. The humidity comes with that, and in order to stay comfortable, right, it makes it a lot harder. So really, really interesting concepts. Not much different than a commercial building, however, which, all the same concepts we talk about for the home as it relates to finding a healthy home. This is really fascinating on how they take these same applications that we talk about all the time, the fresh air makeup, monitoring moisture, and filtration. Really, it's that food and water that we deal with in our homes. They're just doing it at such a scale here, and they're doing it at such detail. It's even beyond commercial building applications because of how they're having to deal with so much activity and what they're subject to, the water, right? So, and the salt that comes from the ocean. So let's talk about maintenance. I just wrote a bunch of notes here, so I thought I'd go over with you the maintenance on these areas. They have a 1 month, they have a 6 month, and they have a 1 year plan. And then, of course, they have a daily regimen that they do as well. So basically, whenever they're going through their 1 month rotation, they're doing just normal cleaning, he said. Just spot checking for any areas, especially when it's been a high traffic or a high humidity season. They just have to keep up with that maintenance a little bit more. They're checking their filters, etc., wiping down the inside of those cabinets. Um, then they have a 6 month where they actually change out their filters from a filtration standpoint, they're looking at basically a 11 MERV filter. So even the larger units, you're going to have that 11 MERV filter in there, and that 11 MERV filter is going to get, again, daily and monthly checks, and then when it's time, they're going to check and see what the static pressure is on that to see if it's full or not, if it's beyond its lifespan, so that they can continue to monitor that PM 2.5. Generally, is what we're always looking for. That's where things get past all of our filtration in our bodies, and they want to make sure that they're doing that on a normal regimen as well as just doing that inspection. So they have controls. So they don't just say, okay, every 6 months and we're just going to forget it. No different than at home. You still are responsible to monitor what you have, and at the same time have some markers to where you say, okay, every 6 months, every year, we're going to do these things. However, if you see something that is out of the ordinary or it ramps that up, you're still going to change that out. Okay. So things like rust come into play with the metal that they have inside those systems, and then with the salt water that they have to manage. So they're actually scraping that rust off the metal, and then they're putting different products in there, whether it's an acid-based product for cleaning or something for biologicals. They're going to use BioFresh and Coil Shine is what they're using, and they're cleaning those coils every month. So imagine that, cleaning your coils every month. That would be an amazing thing. So the maintenance is a lot higher because, again, you have the traffic, you have these locations, you have to stay on top of these things. So every month they're cleaning those coils. Okay. And so as long as they're doing that, you should be able to keep up with anything from a biological perspective before you have any buildup and then growth as it relates to bacteria and mold. So really, really good regimen, but again, a lot of intention that goes into this. So imagine, again, if we're applying these types of initiatives into our home and we're this intentional with our home, just like having a budget for your house, it's the same thing, okay? Except we're doing a maintenance. So 1 month, 6 month, and 1 year maintenance programs. At the end of that year, they're doing larger scale rotations, like ductwork cleaning comes into play. So usually we talk about every 6 years, give or take 5 to 7 years is what we say for ductwork cleaning on most residential spaces. And once you get into the commercial side, you can do that every 3 to 5 years, depending on your traffic and that sort of thing. Here, every year, they're having a company come into these ships and completely go through the whole system and document with borescopes to see the before and after pictures. They have to document before and after, say, yes, it was clean, or it was dirty, now it is clean. And so going through that process is huge as well. So much like the ductwork cleaning company that we're involved with, 3-in-1 Ductwork Cleaning, they're going to go through, they're going to do the coils, they're going to inspect the cabinets, they're going to wipe down those inside of those cabinets, they're going to do the ductwork, they're going to validate a process through cameras, they're going to sanitize that system, again, just like these guys are doing on these cruise ships. And so, again, that level of white glove service, we're trying to bring this level of service to the house, and in some cases better. But it's really, really interesting to see that the same concepts are being applied here for the public. As it relates to that normal rotation, the awareness, there's somebody dedicated to not only just running all of these programs and making sure that they're going through and checking all the boxes, but they're actually physically going to all these sites every night. So the engineer himself takes his handheld monitor, monitors the same things that he's seeing on the computer through their programming, and he goes to every single location, and he's going to make sure that every night that every area is showing what it says. So he feels it personally as well. He gets that physical representation, he gets that physical monitoring, and he looks for the CO2 levels, he looks at the oxygen levels, he looks at the PM 2.5, he looks at your comfort level, moisture levels, all of that. So everything goes to air quality. All these things are related. Okay. So physically doing that with the awareness and the intention of making sure that everything is operating as intended. So again, imagine going to your house like that every night, but there's somebody dedicated for that. That's the amount of intention that you have to have here. So, but again, we're bringing this awareness into our homes and trying to bring this type of quality and awareness so that we can be intentional with the air quality or the health of our home. So very fascinating. So as it relates to comfort and the general operations of the system, we talked about it being on a chiller system, and we're looking for the same numbers roughly here. Uh, Basically, they do everything in Celsius because it's an international thing, and in the States, everything goes by Fahrenheit. So, but they're roughly shooting for their chiller temperature to be about 44.6 degrees on the cold side and 140 degrees on the hot side. So that way they've got a huge swing to work with. And if their goal is if their same goal is the same as ours, 68 to 75 degrees, I tell everybody, a little bit tighter than that, but that's really their goal because they have to have a swing for the extreme temperatures. We just came from Alaska as an example. And so he's shooting for that 7 degrees Celsius more than that 6 degrees Celsius than he would be in the South. And that averages out to a few degrees difference on your overall temperature swing to stay away from dew point and to get your comfort levels to where they're manageable so you don't have that extreme swing. So just a little bit of movement one way, a little bit of movement the other way kind of helps keep you in that center to where you've got balance. Okay. Um, so much like the ocean, right? Anyway, I digress. So but that 20 to 23 degree Celsius is what we're looking at, which is 68 to 75 degrees, right in there for us. Okay, it's the same targets we're trying to hit, but it has to do with the moisture levels that are inside that and the health of what's in there, what's on the particulates. So getting as much as those particulates down. This is where it goes. I know this is a hot topic right now for a lot of cruise lines, but viruses, right? And every season or every 2 to 4 years, um, things come up, and new viruses come out that we have to deal with. And here on a boat where everybody's stuck together, it becomes a way bigger issue. Fear comes into play with that, how they manage those situations. It all goes into, other than the cleanliness of the boat, which is a different level of maintenance for surfaces, it's what's our exposure. We talk about that all the time. So that exposure, again, where we get into that 2.5 and below, um, viruses love dry conditions, right? So when we're up north, it's a little bit different than farther south where things are heavier, and they don't thrive as much. It's more the mold and the bacteria in that case. But either way, things can spread, however they spread, depending on the virus. And so what we want to do is be able to, at least from a particulate standpoint, look at our main exposure, which is airborne. And through this delivery system, we want to make sure that this maintenance is being handled correctly, and once we get into the other side, the offensive side, I'll say, with these topics, this is where we get into the purification side. So we need something to attack those particulates, and we've always talked about this, even on the residential side. It's like, how good do you want it, right? So after we get what we call a better baseline in a house, whenever we're doing our environmental testing, our investigations through our environmental company, we're going to look at, say, okay, let's look at things holistically. And after we get a better baseline to say, okay, this is normal ecology for this area. If we've dealt with any sources that are potential, any category 2 contamination, which is residual from those areas that we want to remove. Now we say, okay, this is normal ecology. Once we establish that, depending on if you're a sensitized individual to these things, or if you just want things to be better, that's where we offer different options as it relates to filtration and technology. So, same technology, folks. Same technology we have. If not, ours is better, dare I say. The basically the ionization that we use and that we promote through our website It is the same type of technology that they use here. I don't think they get into the ionized hydrogen peroxide that we get to, but they do use ionization, and they use that ionization throughout. So depending on the type of ionization that you're using, some of them are like a bee sting, others are bouncing around in clusters, right? And so if you get a clustered ionization method, it's going to be a lot more effective and actually attack surfaces. And then it's about how it is delivering that technology, those ions, to charge those particles, and what the efficacy of is within a space. So how that's being delivered through the HVAC system is a big deal. There's a lot of technologies out there as it relates to UV. He said they used to use UV, but now they use ionization, which is the same thing we're finding in our industry for our homes. So we're promoting those same things, except it's an ionized hydrogen peroxide, which is a natural and self-regulating type of technology. So same here, that it's self-regulating. So they just let those things basically attack the air, do their thing, and then it's self-regulated. You can't have too much because it has no residual, and it's just knocking those particles down, changing the viability of those particles for whatever is on it, and then neutralizing different compounds as it relates to VOCs, etc. So if you're doing all that at once on the offense side, right, as long as you're not having those residual effects like of UV, where you're going to get an ozone or possibly formaldehyde, you're going to self-regulate. You're going to get those particles down, and then those filters are going to come into play, and then your cleaning regimen. So really, that's, in my opinion, the best way to do it, and that's exactly what these cruise ships are doing. That's what we've been promoting for years. So check out our website on that. All right. Um, so, and this all started from COVID. The awareness came up where we're all stuck, we're all sick. Everybody's now having to investigate things more and learn about pathogens in the air, and how things get spread, and about exposure. And so, as long as we have a little bit of offense, I always say, and a whole lot of defense, um, that way you get that self-regulating technology, and then you get the trash can, which is just loads up just like we do. We're the filter too, right? So in this cruise ship, we want all this fresh air, right? This is really what we want. But to get this in a house or inside the ship is a little bit more difficult, because you know everything is food. So we have to find a balance here, and this is all what we're really looking for. So let's go back to um, the enthalpy wheel. Okay, that food and water. We talked about how we attack. We talked about how we catch. They're using 11 MERV filtration. Now, can it be better? Yes, it can be better. And as a side note too, in the medical areas here that they have, they actually go up to HEPA filtration, which is like a MERV 16, MERV 18, and they'll they'll utilize that for that area alone, because again, the static pressure is different. So how that delivers, there's no way they could get enough airflow with that level of filtration in the rest of the ship. But you could have some outboard, right? And that wouldn't be practical either. It's all about space here. But in your house, we always recommend a combination. Okay, but in that area there, it's specifically designed and sized for that type of static pressure, which is a HEPA filter. Okay, and we've talked about that in the past as well. You need the right sizing and layout for that. Now, imagine like all these areas are zoned, all these areas are monitored, and they can tell you anything. If they're off 1 degree, they'll see it, and they'll say, okay, why are we off 1 degree? Is it a certain time? Are there more people in this area? Is it certain times of the day where we have different trends? They're monitoring all that so that they can make micro adjustments and not have these huge swings. Okay, so instead, again, we're doing this as it relates to this enthalpy wheel. This is kind of like training wheels for your HVAC system. This is where we go into extra management for moisture. Moisture is the big deal, and is the main job of the HVAC. And especially when you have a climate like this, at least down south, where you have the heat with the moisture, now they have to deal with other things. So they need some help. They need some training wheels. And in the south, where we're from, In Nashville, we always promote this as well. Usually it starts out with like an ERV or an HRV system if you're up north, but ERV system usually is in the center of the country. And then we actually encourage an extra DHU in the south to kind of help supplement outside fresh air makeup. So when you're balancing all these different things and you've got this outside influence, they need some help. So basically, they have a huge system that actually acts like an ERV. Okay. The other thing, though, is they have an HRV as well. So they're using heat and that pull of that energy with the moisture, both to be able to help find that balance. So lots of systems added in. Okay. So they'll use both of those systems in the same way that they're doing the chiller and the boiler system for the heat and the cool. They'll kind of do that same type of thing as it removes moisture as well. So very, very fascinating, which is a lot of mechanical. So and then, as it relates to exhaust with mechanical, I've talked to them about that. They have their intake and their exhaust in different locations on the ship so that they don't completely different locations, several floors, other side, to where they're not getting that influence. So you're not cycling contaminants. Usually that's where you get into carbon emissions, that sort of thing. So that's a good thing. And with that said, uh, it's really, really fascinating to see all the level of intention that they have here, how they're doing. Again, it's not just the what, it's the how. They do everything. And the same goals here that I'm seeing that we're trying to get in these homes. But again, there are dedicated people every day here for that air quality in this location. And in a commercial building, it's the same way. We have to start thinking in the same manner in our homes. The only difference is I think we're a little bit more buttoned up, when it's hot and cold, because these have a lot more traffic, these areas, and when we're buttoned up, now we get the extreme swings and we get to dew point quicker. So if you have movement, that helps kind of buffer that. So some of this is like we had initially started. We had talked about the enthalpy wheel, how they're bringing 50% fresh air in, 50% circulation all the time, and then 50% conditioning. Plus, you have separate units in all these different restaurants. Every different room has a supplemental unit. So instead, they're not handling the whole load. It's like having two HVAC systems, one for your common area of the house and one for your bedrooms. You can think of it that way. Um, so again, lots of mechanical on these to find that balance so that your margins of swing are not from here to here, they're from here to here, right? We're humming. And so now the movement, we're staying away from dew point easier, and we're controlling it. So for any of you musicians that are out there in Tennessee, I'm going to tell you it's a lot like compression. Okay, putting a little squeeze on, right? So we control things a little bit better. Um, so that enthalpy wheel is really helpful, like an ERV and HRV system. Um, so lastly, we'll talk about the disposal. Now, all this condensation has to go somewhere, right? Very, very acidic usually in most cases. And what I'm going to say is, whenever you have that type of acidity, plus you have all the other gray water that they have to deal with from showers and dishwater, et cetera, that has to go somewhere. Well, they can't just dump it in the ocean as it is. It has to be treated. So from an environmental standpoint, they're looking at the pH, they're looking at the filtration, the bacteria that's in there. Um, all of that has to be treated. So there's almost like a retention reservoir on the boat that has a maintenance for it as well. So all of your condensate that comes from these units has to go someplace. And again, it's highly acidic. You can't just dump it in there as it is. It has to be treated and then given back, just so they have their own water treatment for their gray water here, as well as their black water too. But that's kind of a given. So how we exchange, how it comes in, becomes airborne, and then how we take it out and put it back in the ocean. It's crazy, crazy. So I hope I hope you understand that as complex as some of these ships are, it's really not much different than we're talking about as far as concepts are concerned for the house. It's food and water, right? And that food is offense and defense, whole lot of defense. And then you have the moisture management, how we manage the moisture depending on your climate, your zone, tightness of your house, etc. All of that kind of comes into play. Movement. We always tell everybody turn their ceiling fans on all the time, having some outboard movement, unless you have a specific system that is designed for that 2 or 3 stage uh, circulation, to where the coils don't get dried out. You can still get your temperature differential for your dew point on your coil to remove the moisture. But again, on these ships, they have several systems where in your house, you've got one usually per floor, right, or per zone. So it's not like you're treating your common areas and um, you have circulation separate for each room, plus you have an HVAC unit. So you're overlapping that way. You're trying to get everything out of one unit, which makes it a little bit harder. So if you just have some movement in the room, some fans, something just to circulate the air to get that equilibrium happening and throughout your home, along with those other applications, you're going to be in a lot better shape. So again, the food and water concepts, if we deal with that filtration, if we deal with the circulation, we should be able to manage moisture and get our comfort level as well. All right. Hopefully all that helps you. We're having a great time here. We needed a vacation really bad. So, but we're looking forward to getting back in the saddle there. So we hope to see you soon. And feel free to reach out with any questions. Look up Four Corners Environmental website and look up 3-in-1 duct cleaning for your duct cleaning. And then, of course, anytime you want to look for probes, filtration, we're going to have a whole segment on those products as well and talk to you about different functional doctors we're using, different modalities we're using that we're adopting to try to stay healthy. All of these different things that we're trying to do to find a balance between the body and the environment. Hope to see you soon.